Yep. Well, I guess it's Easter. So for those of y'all out there, first who celebrate Easter, happy Easter. Other than that, welcome back to the Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host Chris, making sure the frames are in the frame. How do y'all feel about the word Do y'all feel like it's a little lazy? What do you think where do you think the compulsion for filling that space with words like come from? Anyway, I have on my mind a few things that I want to share with y'all, maybe process rather in real time, and here they go. So one of the things that I've expressed here on the podcast that I try to get people to understand early and often about my personality, just my general disposition, especially when it comes to communication, is that I appreciate, and something that I practice is speaking directly. I do make mistakes in this because it is a form of communication that, if done while highly emotional, is still effective, but also is difficult to temper some of those bigger emotions, right? So if I'm frustrated and I'm speaking directly, that shows. If I'm angry and I'm speaking directly, that shows. If I'm happy and I'm speaking directly, that shows. And not to mention, just as an aside, like, I'm a pretty emotional person and I don't hide my feelings a lot. Kind of wear them on my sleeve. It's really difficult for me to, if I feel a certain way, especially about another person, it's really hard for me to pretend like I don't feel that way. Like, you about to feel that I do feel that way about you. But anyway, one of the reasons that I haven't gone into for my preference for communicating this way is I don't feel like, especially in today's climate, within any context, that there is really any room for any cognitively lazy conversations or explanations, right? Taking a break and just throwing things in like this melting pot with these catchwords like historical trauma, or like, these other things that upon hearing a person recognizes really early that this is something, if I pull the cap off of this, it's a task, and we're going to be here unpacking a lot of second and third and fourth contextually related arguments and context, and it's, and I feel like that's a trap, right? And it's kind of a way out. So, if you feel a way about a topic or a circumstance, I think that it's best that you just cut right to the meat of it. And if you don't know what you're talking about, which I see a lot, just avoid talking about it. Because what I think I observe happening, I'm not sure. I don't spend a lot of time in other people's heads. But what it appears that I think I observe to be happening is, especially in even mildly intellectual conversations, they don't even have to be like the complex nature of the complex nature. They can just be like a mildly intellectual, semi-deep, just a regular everyday conversation. And people, I think, out of a need, I guess, to maybe feel like they belong, have a desire to sound smart or cultured or aware. And I don't know that there's inherently anything negative about having desires in this way. I just think that it's probably a bit dangerous. I mean, at least personally, like for your self-esteem, to, I guess I'll say, put on like you get it when you really don't. Like, fake it till you make it isn't really appropriate for some situations, right? So I don't feel like there's anything wrong with asking questions. Like if you don't, there's a struggle feeling like, especially if you're around a bunch of people who you think are a certain way, right? Who are like, I guess woke, for lack of a better term, and you desperately want to feel a part of. Ask questions, do your own research, read, develop your own voice and opinion. It is exhausting to spend any amount of time in echo chambers where it is obvious from the outset that people are just getting together to affirm each other and not argue or push or, stretch any boundaries with one another and make each other think. This is tough. So anyway, without getting too tangential on that is another reason why I believe that direct communication is important. And lazy explanations, that just, like, if I see that, I mean, everybody does it. You may just want kind of a way out of a conversation, so you just hit them with one and then just kind of dip out to the side. But if you're a person who does this regularly and you know that you are, trust and believe that other people recognize it too. And I think that, at least in my mind, that kind of dovetails into a conversation that I had with some friends and colleagues the other day. And I've talked about this before, but it surrounds like credentialism or credentialing. Well, what is that? Well, the idea that, and it's historically has been a problem, because culturally there's a belief that the person with the degree or the credentials behind their name who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and X amount of years in academia, training in that way and collecting these degrees and credentials, and that they are or should be considered the authority to be deferred to on any and all things within or on a given topic, which I think is wild. And I talked a bit about this the other day. And within this context, the idea of someone like me, who I do have a couple of degrees, but the majority of my experience comes from living it. And seemingly, to people who put more value on credentialing or credentialism, to them it may be that I've jumped the line, right? And this creates over and over, it's like a repeatable thing, an obvious and frankly a bit embarrassing to watch nonplussed reaction from people who feel slighted by my presence in position, right? So like, in other terms, they feel like I didn't earn it because I don't have a master's in this and I don't have the training in this and I didn't study under this, or, I'm not an expert in this way. Look, it's all love, man. Like I said the other day, especially when it comes to matters of like addiction, like since my earliest memories, and this is I've been around addiction in one form and participated in one form or another since, the majority of my life. So I, in my mind, obviously, I'm going to have a biased opinion of myself against someone who's not lived the experiences that I have and has in 8, maybe 10 years squeezed in, this training. But you don't. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The human experience doesn't live in those textbooks. Unless you're talking about just like the experience of someone showing up more than they don't, working pretty hard, and I've said this before too, demonstrating that you're just pretty much bad with money because you spent tens upon thousands of dollars on degrees that, I guess in some regards still grant marginal amounts of access, and that, if I'm being honest, would be the only reason why I pursued a degree. But what can you do? Let me know how y'all feel about this idea of credentialism or credentialing, and whether or not you believe that there's equal amounts of value, or where you see there's a split, there's a divergence, where is it more important to have lived experience and where is it less important to have a degree. Because if you look at history, right, some of our greatest leaders, at least in the black community, some of these people from some of the worst ghettos in our country at the time, going through the most radical forms of racism and oppression and murder, they were spurred into action by experience. They didn't have they weren't just I'm in 8th grade and I'm feeling high school is next year and that's only 4 short years and I gotta really start thinking about my extracurricular activities, my clubs that I'm in, my associations, what I'm saying? Start picking out of college. No, they were spurred by their direct environment and what was going on in real time in their lives to get up, get involved. And I think in that way, in my mind especially, that's where I view the biggest difference between choosing a major and a minor. That's your biggest problem. Some of y'all who put so much stock into this credentialism over lived experience, where we are veritable surpluses of information. I don't know how many more times I have to say it, or if I put it in different ways, how much clearer I can be that while we may not be the representative for all of the people who exist in the communities that we come from, but we are a voice. So if you have an interest in the needs of the people in these communities, what better way than to tap in with the rhythm and the culture and the heartbeat by way of listening to the voices of the people who come from these communities? Because if this isn't obvious enough for you by now, let me just lay it out for you again. If you listen, people will tell you exactly what they need. Now, there may be a language barrier, that's for sure, because they don't teach you the language that people speak in addiction and in the black community at your local 4-year. It don't happen. Even if you... Y'all remember the Ebonics classes where they tried to teach white people about speaking black? Oh, man. That was some comedy, right? Anyway. Short and sweet, y'all. 15 minutes. I know that I don't want to bore y'all with you know what? I actually don't give a fuck. Watch it or don't. If I got something to say, I'm going to say it. But anyway, that's it for today. If you didn't do it on the way in, do it on the way out. Hit that like, subscribe, post notification bells. Stay up to date on all the cool shit we talk about here on the Beats Like That podcast. Peace, y'all.